who will be chairing the session as well as moderating the session as such. C Sudhakar Rao Garu is the Director Branding for ICFI Group, and also he heads our Education Committee. He's the chair for our Education Committee for FICCI Telangana State Council. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, very good afternoon to all of you and the esteemed speakers who have joined for this session. It's my honor and privilege to chair this session, and this is being conducted on the eve of the World Skills Day. And therefore, it has got all the significance and the requirement for us to understand what steps are being taken up at various levels and different segments that are impacting us. I'm very happy and fortunate to have some of the most distinguished members today on the panel. We have Mr. Srikanth Sinha, who is the CEO of TASK, Telangana Academy of Skills and Knowledge. And then we have Dr. Vikas Singh, who is the CEO for Crux Management. We have Dr. Srivastava Rau, who is very, very popular, Apollo Med Skills. And we have, again, a very popular and distinguished academician, Professor V. Venkatramana Garu, who is the Vice Chairman for Telangana State Council of Higher Education. We are fortunate because all these individuals had different and important domains that are going to be key players in building the skilled Telangana or skilled India. So therefore, when we listen to all these distinguished individuals, I'm sure we are going to get the to-do list for each of the segments that they are representing, including the government, the bonding or the bridge between the industry and academia forged by as one of their mandates by TASK. We will get to know all those things. But let me take a few minutes and set the context, and then after that we will request the distinguished speakers to begin their talk. Let me share my screen. Can I share my screen? Can somebody allow me to do that?
Just a second, sir. I'm doing it. Just a second.
No problem. The session chair actually is supposed to talk less and listen more, and I'm going to follow that dictum. But then I have a few slides to basically focus on and then set the context or raise a few questions here itself and follow it up for the discussion as individual speakers begin their talk.
I have made you the co-host, sir.
Yeah. So the buzz associated with the skilling or buzz associated with the word skill, upskill, is quite huge. But when we actually track down to understand what kind of tangible numbers or the track record that we have developed, that is where I think we seem to be having no draw, in the sense that we don't have clear answers in those areas. I think world over, the problem is common in the sense in terms of the requirement for skilling, because the business environments are common. So we hope that at the end of this discussion, we will have some kind of tangible answers, or at least pointers or indicators towards where we are heading and what we are supposed to, what we have already done and what we are supposed to do. So can I now share my screen with your permission? I guess it's visible right now. Yeah. So these are the distinguished members who are going to be part of the discussion today. I hope I got all the names right. Yeah, the program is a brief welcome address by myself, followed by the first speaker is going to be Dr. Vikas Singh. Then we have Dr. Srivastava Rau, who will be speaking, and then Mr. Srikanth Sinha, followed by Professor Venkatramana. And we will have few questions, either at the exit or in between. We will be able to catch up for questions. The audience is requested to key in their questions, if any, so that we'll pick it up depending on the relevance of the question and and to which speaker we can pose the same question to. We all know that digital and AI technologies are transforming, therefore we need new skills, and there is nothing new in this. The requirement is well understood by us. As we move forward, the need for manual skills or physical skills will be going down, and including the basic cognitive ones, but the demand for tech skills or social and emotional skills and higher cognitive skills will only go up. The McKinsey and company has identified a large number of foundational skills, especially in terms of cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, self-leadership, and digital skills. This is a model which I borrowed from McKinsey and company, and this serves as a basic platform to understand what kind of gaps are there, even for those who are well educated to those who have least educated. I think these can be measured depending on the context. So the requirement for everyone to focus on is these skills. They identified 56 deltas under 13 skill groups, as mentioned. So there are 4 under cognitive, there are 3 under interpersonal, and there are another 3 under self-leadership and 3 more in digital. As we move forward, we will understand, and also the esteemed speakers will let us know, that the risk-taking ability to drive change, breaking orthodoxies, coping with uncertainty, self-development, digital collaboration, digital learning in itself, these are all the most important. And while these key insights are there as a framework for us, I think strategies and solutions will have to be built around these deltas so that various organizations and agencies can keep pace and provide tangible actions on the ground for all the parties concerned. So the summary that we have from McKinsey and company is that artificial intelligence algorithms will help us identify where skilling is required, upskilling or reskilling, depending on new professions or the demands that we have in the market. Now, the shift is from occupation-based qualifications to skill-based accreditation, which is going to actually suit the needs of the employers. That is the shift that is happening. And then world over, the future of work, where governments will have to, not just in India, but even abroad, they'll have to invest in these and offer training incentives for everyone, both the trainees as well as the agencies that are training, so that they can be measured on the employment outcomes. Yes, technology will have to help us both in education as well as in industry, that is academia and industry, to drive towards future-proofing of all the citizens. Healthcare, we have Dr. P. Srivastava Rau, who is an authority in this area. He's going to speak a lot about it. I'm going to cut a little bit down on this. But allied and healthcare professions, that act which was passed this year, a lot is expected to be done on the ground. The need has been identified, accelerated by the COVID, and therefore a lot of questions and opportunities have thrown up. Their salaries are going up, and then all kinds of allied healthcare practitioners or professionals are required. Lab technicians, phlebotomists, housekeeping staff, so on and so forth. Everyone is required. But then on the ground, there are gaps. If the requirement is projected at 2.3 million, we have, I mean, that's a 2012 estimate, whereas we have less than 1 million currently. So these are the healthcare professionals that are required. The bottom of the healthcare, see, you can see the projections of 2017 to 2022. The purple color tells you the numbers in thousands. That is the that is the pre-pandemic projections that were given, and therefore everything is going to go bust if we take it into post-pandemic kind of situation. Well, someone has to study that, and I'm sure we'll have more lessons on that. Allopathic doctors' requirements to nurses and midwives to ancillary healthcare. I think there is a great deal of data, a great deal of information available with us today as to what are the requirements and where we should skill and train people to meet the emerging requirements. So this is just to give an overview of how healthcare, the act covers those people on the left side, and it does not cover that much on the people on the right side, that is the purple color professionals. So yes, that connect will have, because they go by 2-year or longer curricula, which is now recognized, and not less than that. Yes, we need to hire people who can do all the work. So I'm just, in the interest of time, I'm just going forward. The requirements are larger. Many players are playing. As per the World Health Organization, there is a divide between the urban and rural. For example, health workers, out of all the health workers in India, 59 or 60% are in urban areas, whereas the remaining 27.8%, where the 27.8% population resides. But the larger population is in rural areas, say 40% of the population, where 72% of the population resides, where only 40% healthcare workers are present. So this divide is another issue which we will have to resolve as far as healthcare is concerned. Regarding education, there is a new education policy. Professor Venkatramma is probably going to speak about all that. And then we have very, very hard indicators coming up. Every time we'll have to question the validity of the degrees that we have. BTech is having a social value which is a little higher, but the vocational programs are actually having a lot of functional value that we all know. And there are several indicators, in spite of having the largest youth population or the most productive population, where we are supposed to realize the demographic dividend. That's where the skilling will help. Otherwise, we are going to miss the bus of deriving the dividend from this demographic advantage that we have. There are large number of surveys that have proven this point, and again, out of a large number of engineers who are graduating, very, very few as only 6% of graduates are fit to be hired, as mentioned once by the CEO of Tech Mahindra, Mr. Gurnani. So survey after survey, this has been corroborated, and therefore education as a segment will have to identify who are the job seekers. Even the Deloitte study has identified that a large number of people are not fit for the jobs, and therefore skilling is an important agenda on our table right now. There are lessons for us to learn from New Zealand. I'm sure I'm going to raise these during the discussion. Since Professor Venkatramma Garu is not here, so I'm going to skip these slides. Yes, several universities have come as far as education as a segment is concerned. It is very interesting, but what are the achievements over several years in terms of moving this agenda, or in terms of making any accomplishments on the skilling part, which we will try and understand. Now, this is all I have for now, and with this, I would like to now move on to our regular session. I now invite Dr. Vikas Singh, who is very, very popular. His articles I happened to read recently. I happened to read in the Business World, Dainik Jagran and all, and he's a very nice commentator. He's the co-founder of Crux Management. He's also a social entrepreneur. Associated with the Institute of Public Enterprises and the ISB, both as a member of faculty and leader, Dr. Singh consulting engagements focus on providing insights that help leaders face the challenges of growth, governance, and leadership. He's worked with various organizations around the world. I think he is the right speaker who can talk about what we are supposed to focus in terms of how we can fuse the skill and the education to make it the economic multiplier. So with this intro, I now invite Dr. Vikas Singh. He has been slotted for about 15 minutes. I'll be very happy if the discussion or the delivery of the talk can be restricted within the 15 minutes. Over to you, Dr. Vikas Singh. Dr. Vikas.
This I can.
Good afternoon. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, yes.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Rao, for that very generous introduction. I'm happy to share our experience of what we have done in the area of skill development, but my focus of this 15-minute conversation will be around how do we really integrate education, skill, and the jobs. So I call this whole thing as there are jobs. Those of us who believe that India does not have enough jobs, I'd like to state a point. People in the corporate sector tell me, sir, there are enough jobs. It's just that the youth is not interested in those jobs. And if I can elaborate that, for example, if somebody wants to do work in the area of sales, there are obtain number of jobs available, but most of the people who want to work or who want a job, they do not want a sales job. Similarly, jobs are of plenty. It's just that these jobs don't fit the need of the youth. And we will talk about this a little bit later. Let me start by sharing a story that I was in Delhi, went to meet my mother a couple of months back, and her cook, his name is Akbar. So I asked Akbar, Faiz has just passed out. What does he want to do now? So Faiz is about 17, 18 years old. So he said, sir, Faiz has done well, but I don't want him to join an engineering school. So obviously my first reaction was maybe Akbar doesn't have enough money. That's the reason why he doesn't want his son to join an engineering school. He said, no, sir, I don't want him to join an engineering school because he may not be able to get a job because there's so many engineers who do not have a job. Now that's a very interesting aspect because when we were growing up, everybody wanted to be an engineer. Today there's a situation where my cook's son does not want to be an engineer because he believes that an engineering degree will not give him livelihood opportunities. Whereas if he becomes a cook, he can have a better prospect in life. Now that's something that has been a great mindset change, and that's something that we are experiencing across the job landscape. Now let's move forward. Some of us, so let me just give you some facts and figures. Since the 1992, over the last 30 years, our study reflects that the growth rate has been jobless. India has grown on average at about 8% over the last 30 years, but the jobs have not grown at 8%. It means that while we grow, does not directly mean that we are going to create the same number of jobs as the growth of the economy. Now, it's not something that makes us happy, but it's a reality. The reality is that India's growth will be jobless, which means that we may grow at 8%, we may grow at 10%, but our jobs, our employment opportunities will not grow at the same rate. The second fact I'd like to state is that if a graduate is not able to land a job within 3 months of passing out, the chances of him or her getting a job diminishes by 30%, which means that the best time to get a job is to get it as soon as you graduate or as soon as you pass out. If you wait for 3 months, the chances of you getting a job goes down by 30%. If you wait for a year, the chances of getting a job goes down by 90%, which means that if you don't pick up a job within the first 1 year, you might as well wait for a much longer duration. Sometimes the chances are as low as only 10%. The third fact is that your employment opportunity does not change with graduation. In some setting, your chances of getting a job worsens when you are a graduate. And this is an example that we were talking about with Akbar. There are more jobs which does not require a graduation degree. Though the paradox is when RBI set out a job opportunity for clerks, close to about 50,000 PhDs applied for that job. However, the fact of the matter is your graduation has no bearing on your ability to get a job. So those of us who believe that a graduate degree is a sure shot to success, please examine again. Contrary to popular belief, India is not a young economy. Many of us believe that our demographic dividend is going to last forever. It is true that we are a young economy, but if you look at the entire landscape, most people do not realize that India is 4 different countries. For example, if you are 27 years old, or if you are 24 years old, in UP, you are already old. If you're 21, you're already old. You've already passed the youth age. You are not a demography dividend, so to say. However, if you are 35, if you're 34 in Tamil Nadu, you are still young. So those policymakers who design a program or a skill program, keeping that India is a young economy, India's job opportunities is for the young, should re-examine this. That at 22, you are old in UP, at 22, you are old in Bihar, at 34, you are young in Tamil Nadu, at 33, you are young in Karnataka. So the median age of somebody in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu is 34, median age of somebody in UP and Bihar is 21. So the government policies around job creation should factor that. Another aspect that I'd like to share is that India does not have a job problem. Most of us, and I know this may sound very difficult for people to believe, India has a wage problem, which means that if somebody is willing to work at 15,000 rupees or 12,000 rupees, there are plenty of jobs. If somebody wants to work at minimum wages, there are plenty of jobs. Our problem is that as soon as we graduate, we expect, and rightly so, because you probably spent 4 best years of your life in trying to graduate, you would expect something better. Connected to this is the fact that our job is not personal, our job is societal, which means that job is not only for money, job is also for some prestige in society. If you don't have a job, it's unlikely that you will get married. It's unlikely that you will have friends. So job is very societal, especially the white collar jobs. So a person can be a plumber and earning more than an engineer, but his societal or her societal value is much more if the person is working an engineering job, even earning half the money that a plumber gets. So these are some of the facts. If you look at it, why is the unemployment rate high? If you look at 40% of the Indian population still relies on the agriculture sector. Now, agriculture sector is growing at about 2.5%. Now, agriculture sector throws out, and I'm using the word throws out in a very conscious manner, it throws out the youth out of the agri sector and they come into the mainstream looking for jobs and they start competing with people who are in the urban sector. Now look at it, 40 to 50% of the people who have no jobs, the growth rate is at 2%, and there's no growth there. If they come into the urban sector, the competition for those jobs becomes. So India needs a reform in the agriculture sector to really make a difference. Now, these are some of the problems that I mentioned. What is the solution? The solution is we need to fuse. There should be a fusion of skill and jobs. Somebody in the 1930s, a Russian philosopher said, and I remember this very clearly, I read this about 30, 35 years ago. He said, let's keep education out of learning. You can be an educated person, but you cannot be learner. So unfortunately, that's very, very true about India. I worked for about 4 years trying to change. I don't want to name the university. I was the chairman of the committee which wanted to change the syllabus of the university. I sat for 4 years, and believe me, the syllabus, I couldn't change the syllabus. So if we find it so difficult to change the syllabus in the university, where are the reforms coming? Our syllabus are outdated. Most of the university syllabus are outdated. So I asked a professor once that why are you guys so much against changing the syllabus? And he said something interesting, and I can never forget that. He says, Dr. Singh, you can change the syllabus. I have no problem with changing the syllabus. I'll be happy. I will applaud it. I will appreciate it. So I said, that's great. But what's the punchline? What's the catch? He says, you can change the syllabus, but I will teach only what I know. So the professors don't want to. Professors will teach what they know. It doesn't matter what the syllabus is. So we need to ensure that there is a fusion of skill and education in our higher education. If we don't do that, skill development for 9 months, for 3 months, for 2 months, for 2 weeks is not going to move the needle, my friends. One of the studies that we did about a couple of years ago at Crux clearly articulates that close to about 40 to 50% of the people who undergo a skill development program of less than 3 months lose job, because when the corporate sector recruits you, they do not recruit you only for that skill. They recruit you for a holistic Vikas. They don't say, okay, he knows Java, so I'm going to recruit him. You may pick up Java in 3 months' time, but your ability to perform the job requires much more than your Java skill. Now, there have been several, whenever I have been at any government committee, they always talk about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship looks like the second coming of Jesus Christ. Most of us will probably know that 90% of entrepreneurs who start in India do not grow beyond 2 people company. So those of us who think entrepreneurship is the secret sauce to solving the job problem should re-examine that, because 90% of entrepreneurship do not grow beyond 2 people, which means basically the person who starts the entrepreneurship, maybe his son, maybe his wife, or somebody else. So they are not job creators, so to say, though 80% of jobs are still in the unorganized sector, but those jobs are not jobs that are sustainable and that has growth opportunities. So the second aspect is, so those are the micro and the medium scale entrepreneurs. Yes, there is opportunity in the small scale industries. The MSMEs, I'm talking about the small, those have opportunity. Now, the problem with those, so they are able to scale up to about 10 to 15 jobs, but beyond that, they face serious challenges. The ecosystem is not conducive for them to grow. Now, it's bad for the small industries, and it's unfortunate that they are not able to grow. But it's also equally unfortunate for the large organizations, because I have written about this several times, that the small industries are the missing middle. They are the ones who are supposed to create value in the economy. And if we are not able to make sure that they grow, the economic value of the economy goes down. So these are some of the things that I wanted to start with. Of course, a McKinsey study, I think Professor Rao spoke about it. One of the studies that I saw, McKinsey says that job is probably the skill that is available in the state is a big factor in an industry or in the corporate sector to choose that state. The tax rate is one, but availability of skill is a big factor, which means that those states who think that they are able to provide the best tax benefit to the corporate, and because of that they will be able to attract, must also understand that tax is given. Every state wants to provide the best tax rate. But if you really want to attract the Googles and the large organization, you must make sure that you have the best skills in your state. Am I doing okay with the time? Because I think
Fantastic.
if I'm not, I'll take another.
Yeah, Dr. Vikas Singh, that's a very good opening discussion for us. And I think we'll come back to you for questions based on audience's reactions. But for now, I will, with your permission, invite Dr. P. Srivastava garu. Dr. P. Srivastava garu is the CEO of Apollo MedSkills Limited. It is the skilling arm of the Apollo Hospitals Group, and he's been there since 2017 as a CEO. Now, Dr. Srinivas Rao, for a brief intro, a postgraduate in medicine, a member of Royal College of General Practitioners, member of American College of Physicians, had continuing education in emergency medicine and diabetes, a management graduate from ISB, Indian School of Business. He has co-authored books on hospital management and health informatics. He is the program director for healthcare management program at IIM Bangalore, a visiting faculty at Jain University and Apollo College of Management, Hyderabad, and he has been a guest speaker across many leading universities across the globe. Many more things to his credit, actually, as I go through. I think he's a fantastic healthcare professional who has great top view with respect to the segment. And now, based on his experience and wisdom, I'm sure we'll all stand to gain and learn from. And I invite now Dr. Srinivas Rao garu to speak on the future of skill development in healthcare. Over to you, Dr. Srinivas Rao garu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sudhakar, and thanks for your kind introduction. So next 12 to 13 minutes, I will take this opportunity to share views on what are the key drivers that are driving the future of skills in healthcare. So I'll just take help of few slides as a placeholder as I speak. I don't know if you're able to see my screen now, everyone. Thank you. So I'm just going to talk about key drivers. As we all know, healthcare, the entire industries and sectors are being transformed by technology. Healthcare is a human enterprise. While technology has a role in transformation in healthcare, but there are a lot of human factors. There are a lot of other psychological and other key drivers that are actually driving the future of healthcare skill development. So these are the various job roles and opportunities. I'll spend 30 seconds here. So if you see in India, in healthcare, these are the various layers. There are about 7 layers in health education in India. We have super specialist doctors on the top of the pyramid. Then you have specialist doctors who are MD/MS, the general physicians, surgeons, pediatricians, ophthalmologists, ENT surgeons, gynecologists, and so on. Then you have MBBS doctors who are the backbone of our primary care, who handle the general practice. These are general practitioners who handle the primary care in India. And we have nurses who have been shown a tremendous effort during COVID. Then you also have a layer of healthcare management professionals. Then allied health and paramedical, where we have seen Sudhakar has presented, there's a huge gap there. So as of now, there's a need for 7.2 million healthcare professionals in the next 8 years. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, there's a new cadre of resources emerging. These are support service professionals. These are home health aides, the geriatric aides who are taking care of senior citizens at home. And I'll talk more about that in my next slides. But this is something that everyone should know, that these are the various resources that are currently available in healthcare, and most of them regulated, and some of them are still unregulated in this space. So there are 5 key drivers which are actually driving the future of healthcare skill development in India. If you see, the first driver is the change in consumer behaviors. I'll also talk about the COVID changes, but consumer behaviors have significantly changed in the last 1 decade. You see food being delivered at home through Swiggy or Zomato. You see a cab, you're booking on a mobile phone and a cab arriving at your doorstep. So this is a similar trend that consumers are expecting in healthcare. So because of this particular expectations, healthcare has also started innovating. So you have seen a large rise of phlebotomy technician prior to COVID also. We have seen that the blood samples are being, almost 70% of the samples the diagnostic samples are collected out of home, not at the diagnostic centers. So this is definitely a change in consumer behavior that has actually driven this particular role. Earlier, a decade back, the medical lab technicians used to visit home to collect the sample. Now we have a new emergence of a trade called phlebotomy technician. Similarly, home healthcare is an offshoot of a similar consumer behavior issue. People want to get treated at home. People are more relaxed. People have realized that healing at home is much better. Even the healthcare professionals know that healing at home is better for most of the medical conditions. So home health aides have taken a kind of a huge demand in the last decade. And while the home health care as a revolution started as a senior citizen care or a geriatric care, but there are 4 subsegments within home health care. There's a post-operative care for the patients who are actually getting discharged from the hospital after a surgery, be it a knee replacement or a coronary artery bypass graft. So now the hospitals also want to discharge the patients early and take care of them at their home. This is post-operative, is one segment of home health care. Then you have neonatal care aids. So we have multiple segments. I'll speak that in the subsequent slides. So this is one. Change in consumer behavior is a big driver in healthcare now, and change in culture in India. We have seen a big change in culture in the last 2 decades, I must say. So you see, because of the nuclear families, because of interstate migration for jobs, inter-country migrations for jobs, the families have become nuclear for various reasons. And earlier you used to have a grandma coming to home to take care of the newborn baby at home, or your mother coming to home to take care of the newborn baby. But because of this nuclear family trend, now there is a demand for neonatal aid to take care of the newborn babies at home. So because both the wife and husband are working and you need someone to take care of the neonate. And because of lack of knowledge for these young mothers also, so the neonatal aides are being trained on how to feed, helping the mothers on kind of feeding, giving bath to the newborn babies, then burping management for kids, and so on. So this is a new role that has emerged in India as a support service role. Similarly, the geriatric aids, because of, again, nuclear families, people migrating to countries for jobs, people migrating to different states. So the demand for the geriatric aids has also risen. The change in cultural pattern is the key driver for these roles. Similarly, we have also seen the change in treatment patterns. So you see, earlier the average length of stay, say for a heart attack, which is a myocardial infarction, the average length of stay in the hospital was almost 4 to 5 days. Today, an angioplasty or an angiogram is a daycare procedure. The patients are getting discharged on the second day or on the same day. And similarly, there are about 86 procedures in medicine now in the hospitals that are conducted under a daycare. For example, a kidney stone, lithotripsy is done under daycare procedure. Even a hysterectomy is done as a daycare. Cataract surgeries are daycare surgeries. With change in these treatment patterns and also the hospital's average length of stays, now you also have rehabilitation aids, which are emerging new professions in the healthcare now. So moving on, change in technology. So technology has also definitely transformed the way healthcare resources are being trained. So there are new trades that are emerging. Healthcare has got humongous data now. How to use this data? I've seen Mr. Rao speaking about AI transforming healthcare, and also Mr. Vikas Singh also gave some great thoughts on this. So technology is also playing a role. Technology, there is an emergence of a new role called telehealth coordinators. Who are these telehealth coordinators? During COVID, we have seen an acceleration of teleconsultations. Almost 70% of the doctor consultations in healthcare were through teleconsultation. So the telemedicine is emerging. So especially in rural India. In urban India, we have mobile apps. We directly connect to a doctor either through Practo or Apollo 24/7. But when you go to rural India, you need an assistance to connect the patient and the doctor who is sitting in the cities. So that these professionals are telehealth coordinators, and you teach them on how to, on basics of technology and how to connect the patient. And we also teach some basics of healthcare on how to translate these symptoms to a doctor from a rural patient. Then you also have data analysts. So healthcare data analytics is a huge emerging subject. We have seen a big revolutionary kind of developments happening in radiology. So, the X-rays, they're about, Google has come up with an algorithm. They have analyzed close to 500,000 X-rays, chest X-rays. Now, without an intervention of radiologists, with almost a 96% accuracy, a tuberculosis can be diagnosed. This has also reduced the turnaround time of an X-ray reading in a primary health center or a community health centers where the shortage of radiologists exists. So the X-rays taken in rural India now come through a PAC system to a doctor who is sitting in cities, and they report. So the turnaround time of X-ray reporting in rural India has come down from 5 days to within 24 hours. So technology is definitely transforming, and data analytics is a very big field. I just gave an example of radiology, but there are multiple areas in which technology is playing a role in healthcare. Similarly, the electronic medical records are transforming. Earlier, every hospital used to have a huge medical records division because by regulation, we need to store the medical records for 10 years. Now with electronic medical records taking over, I think this has definitely made life easy, but there's a new role in skill development, that is electronic medical record technicians. So they actually are trained on how to manage data, what is data security, what is HIPAA compliance, how to manage the patient security, data security, and so on. And AI, artificial intelligence, is again playing a big role. So I talked about data analysis. Well, there's a humongous data. That data is being analyzed through machine learning. And once the machine learn, then there is an artificial intelligence that is developed. So a lot of doctors are working in this area, and we are also building AI professionals in healthcare. That means doctors are being trained on how to code or how to support coders on building these algorithms. So similarly, a rise in health insurance adoption, particularly post-COVID. Earlier also, we have seen this rise in adoption. And second, there are public schemes that are coming, which is, for example, Ayushman Bharat, which is released by the government of India. And then you have a lot of healthcare, state government healthcare schemes. In Telangana, we have Arogyasri, which has been a very successful model. So for the claims to be settled in these, in a health insurance, particularly when the claims are of such humongous volume. So in Ayushman Bharat, the expectation, which is a universal health coverage, is expected to cover almost 1.3 billion population. So how to manage claims of that huge volume? So you need medical coding, and these are the codes that are given for diseases and the procedures that are done for diseases. For example, appendicitis is a disease, so there's a medical code for appendicitis. Appendicectomy is a surgery, so there's a code for appendicectomy. So who will code this? So you need a specialized professionals called medical coders. Currently, medical coding is seen in about 7 or 8 countries where universal healthcare is involved. But in India also, with Ayushman Bharat implementation, you will see a rise in medical coders for India. Similarly, medical billers and claim adjudicators who are part of health insurance industry will emerge. So we require a lot of product development executives who can help the technology-based companies on kind of building technology products in healthcare. So an engineer himself or a software coder himself cannot build a technology product. You need support from a clinician. So that is where you require product managers or product development and product implementing that in a hospital. There's a huge demand emerging for this, with technology playing a role in healthcare. So these are, of course, needless to say, people say that the clinicians are very poor communicators, but I think the new generation clinicians are definitely better in communication. But these are some of the essential and must-have skills, apart from the clinical skills, for every every clinician. That is emotional intelligence. Of course, you need to be bold, you need to be courageous when you have to be in healthcare. And we have seen that demonstration of emotional intelligence during COVID by many healthcare professionals. Communication is the key. Teamwork, you need to work alongside multiple clinicians. So, with and egos come into play when you work in teams. I think it's very important to train or show them the teamwork when the students get trained in this healthcare. Time management is very critical, and now digital skills are required for every professional, including the healthcare professional. So this is the future of healthcare skills, and I in this 12 to 13 minutes, this is what I could share, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that may come up. Thank you, Sudhakar garu. Thank you, Vicky, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastava garu. I think that's a fantastic overview on the opportunities and the future of entire healthcare sector as a landscape of opportunities that you have actually covered. So it's pretty interesting, and I'm sure we will have questions as we move forward. So as per the schedule now, allow me to move to the next item, and I now request Mr. Srikant Sinha to take over and deliver his talk. But just before that, a brief introduction of Mr. Srikant Sinha. As I said, he is very popular. He is now the CEO of Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge. So as CEO of Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge, his task is cut out. He is enhancing employability for the youth in Telangana under the aegis of the Information Technology and Electronics and Communications Department with the Government of Telangana. And he has been onboarding several degree colleges and polytechnics and various institutions, how they can actually increase the employability opportunities and the skilling for the youth in Telangana. He is also an executive council member for JNTU. He heads the strategy group for pro bono volunteering at CII's India 75 initiative, and is a convener for advocacy and policy for CII's regional committee on skills and livelihoods. I want to mention this very, very specifically because this is Vicky, and we need to acknowledge that one of our another industry association that Mr. Srikant Sinha is part of, and is making a lot of strides there. So we will also invite Mr. Srikant Sinha to lend that kind of support for Vicky as well in Telangana. So that's the reason I took made a special mention of this activity. Before this, Mr. Srikant Sinha was part of NASSCOM. He was the CEO of NASSCOM Foundation. The very popular Tech for Good movement is something which he was associated with, and he led that activity for about 4 years. And prior to that, he was with the popular AppTech, where he played a pivotal role in India, Latin America, and Middle East for its success. And he studied computer applications and physics from Delhi University. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you Mr. Srikant Sinha. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sudhakar Rao garu, and indeed a pleasure for me to be present on a panel being moderated by you. Thank you, Vicky, for providing this opportunity. And talking about this subject, which is extremely, extremely passionate for me. And having said that, I think, we need to, and thanks Dr. Vikas Singh and Dr. Srinivas for bringing out those points which you did. I think what needs to be understood is that while we were growing up, and there was something called as mechano, then it became mechanics, then it became Lego, and now it has become let go. Everyone is busy playing on their computers, and hardly people do anything with their hands. So the very first thing that we need to understand is, while education is good, but it needs to be along with skills. And that is where you need to create things, you need to do things differently, because everyone is looking at, and probably what the earlier speakers also said, that people just don't want to employ people who know the definition of a screwdriver, but have also used one. And that is where the basic difference comes in. How do you skill people so that they can become relevant?
Now, earlier on, there used to be the concept of blue-collared and white-collared. Thanks to the coronization, if I'm permitted to use that word, coronization of education has already happened. A lot of educational institutions have gone online. A lot of delivery is happening online. A lot of models, education models have changed, all across, be it from, KG to 12 or even up to PG, everything, the models have changed. It's time that coronization of skilling ecosystem also happens, and that becomes very, very important. So let's start by looking at what has happened in this corona period, the pandemic period, as we call it, and what are the changes. So we have seen a couple of industries where jobs were let down, etc. But we also saw industries like essential goods, healthcare, of course, Dr. Srinivas already spoke about it. And actually, this is emerging as a major focus area across various skills report is healthcare. Then we are talking about pharmaceuticals, e-commerce, edtech, FMCG. All these industries continue to grow, but they have a basic difference. 3 Ds came into existence, and the most important D out of that was digitization. A lot of skills needed towards that. Decentralization was the second one. And disruption was the third one. How do you disrupt the existing business systems, ensure business continuity takes place? If you look at the skills required during the pandemic and how they have changed is huge. Just a simple example, imagine for us to do online banking sitting at our homes when the pandemic hit and the country was, had to go under lockdown. 40,000 to 50,000 computers, laptops were shipped to the people's homes during that. Now that was a skill that no one had actually gained, had any competence on, but those were the skills. So one of the major things that the future skills will be required is adaptability. How quickly you are able to adapt to a particular situation. How do you handle a crisis? And these are some of the key skills that are not taught in any institutions as such. If I look at the various reports, be it the World Economic Forum or others, and look at what are the top 10 skills for 2025, first is analytical thinking and innovation. Second is active learning and learning strategies. How do you enhance your learnability? How can you be a lifelong learner? I think what people need to understand is that 17 plus 4 plus full stop is no longer valid, but now it's 17 plus 4 plus 40. So it is skill, reskill, upskill, and it continues in that way. Complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, very, very important. How do you look at that? Creativity, originality, and initiative, right? So I'll touch upon this later on also. Leadership and social influence. Today, 30% of internet time is spent only on social media, right? And this is a pessimistic estimate. Imagine what kind of opportunities does it throw up over there. Use of technology, monitoring and control. A lot of companies today have said that they would continue to have work from home, even moving ahead. A lot of organizations are also talking about, that in fact, manufacturing organizations, etc., for the first time realized that shop floor people, apart from essential skeletal staff, other functions can still be done from home, which was something which was unheard of. People earlier used to think that it's only white-collared IT services people who could work from home and things could still run. So this was a major shift that happened over there. Technology, design and programming, I think Dr. Srinivas also hinted to it. We need a lot of software, a lot of apps to be created, which are actually going to be, apart from being run by digital employees or bots, they also require people to create, these apps. So a lot of technology design and programming would be required. Another skill is resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. You should be able to handle positive criticism, right? You should be able to handle stress. Imagine at that time, if the banking system would have broken down, if all those 40,000-50,000 computers every day were not being shipped? So a lot of resilience and stress tolerance is required. Reasoning, problem solving, and ideation is, of course, the last skill, but that's where it is. Now, if you look at all these skills and how do we ensure that, and we put them into buckets, and various reports have tried to put them into various buckets. So the very first thing, of course, we are talking about digital skills, where 30% of the workforce of the future post-pandemic is expected to work from home. In IT companies, it could be even larger, but that's what it is. Everyone has to have digital literacy. Cyber security is another major area which is emerging. So people need to be skilled in that. I don't expect everyone to be able to handle knocks and socks, etc., but at least they should be able to understand how to handle, because working from home, security and cyber security and hacks and attacks play a key part. So people have to be aware about that. All the companies have aggressively gone ahead and their entire digitization or business transformation, digitalization strategies have been accelerated. So people are required for that. If we look at technology competence and C's, I think already been spoken about by you, Sudhakar Garu, but IoT, data analytics, data architecture, networking, software, coding kind of skillings will still be required. So that's there. But what will be most crucial is what we call as HOTS, or higher order thinking skills. So these are the skills which organizations will look at. Already, if you see today, the industries have moved from a paradigm where interviews used to happen face to face. But in the future, and even now, we are seeing a lot of interviews today are happening online. A lot of technology is being used for that. So skills on how to face virtual interviews are also going to play a key part in the hiring processes of the future. Coming back to higher order thinking skills, these are not only leadership skills, but we are also talking about cognitive cognizance. We are talking about issue resolution. We are talking about agile decision making. We are talking about crisis mitigation, strategic thinking, etc. And this is not something which is rocket science. In fact, the best example of all this is your street side vendor who during Diwali sells crackers, during Raksha Bandhan sells Rakhis, and during the 26th January, etc., sells your kites, etc. Right? They have planned out their business continuity and everything. So it is not something which is rocket science, but yes, these are going to play a key part moving ahead. Social and communication skills, because you are working in isolated teams across. You need to have excellent social communication skills. You should be able to value each other's time. Time management was also discussed earlier. How do you value people's time? How do you ensure that you're able to communicate well? You should have, and growth mindset. You should be able to handle positive criticism. You shouldn't have a closed mindset. So all these things become key skills for the future. Now, easier said than done, that how do you ensure? And I'm not even talking about what exactly is being taught in our institutions today. But we feel that today, if we look at it, it's important to marry education with skills. And hence, somewhere the concept of having a separate skills university, which will compete with your existing universities, is not the right way to go. The new education policy also dictates that you should have more and more skills component into it. AICT has already approved, and as part of JNTU, we have also accepted that AICT talks about major and minor. So we have even permitted that the minor subjects can be done through an online program, and credits would be taken for that. So a lot of these changes towards the skilling have started happening, right? For example, if I look at Telangana itself, English language, communication skills, English continues to be one of the major things, right? And today, if you look at it, Thomas Hardy's and the Charles Dickens, etc., have gone out of the complete syllabus, and you have business communication skills, which is required. The whole concept and the paradigms which are changing now is that for having good music, right, you need musicians. You don't need a person who is a PhD in music, right? And that is where the difference is. So you need skilled people. Of course, I'm not denying the need of research. Research is very, very important. Technology can only grow. Things can only change if focus is there on research also. So while skilling is important, I think skilling bundled with research, with the TVET models of the world, the Australian model or the Finland model, and the German dual degree model, etc., come into play. In Telangana, if we look at it, as I said, a whole lot of things have been done over here. English is just an example. Second thing that we are exploring right now is the internship and apprenticeship, which again has been given importance in the new education policy itself. Now, how do you ensure when, Vikas also spoke about the MSME sector. The biggest challenge with the MSME sector is that they don't have the wherewithal or the financial power to get people on a bench for 6 months, train them, and then have them be productive for the organization. The model of skilling has to be first day, first hour productivity. So institutions where education used to be one size fits all has to change and depends on the kind of requirement of the industry itself. So we are talking about customized education and skilling models emerging for the future. We are also looking at models, for example, internship. A 3 months internship happens only during the summer period in colleges, where the students go to the industry, especially for engineering, etc. Why can't we change the model and have the internship throughout the year? So you have a staggered internship, as a result of which the industry, the MSMEs will benefit, because then they know that they will get one person or two people or X number of people from a college throughout the year. So they don't have to invest, which they are not doing right now. And that's where internship in MSMEs is not that high. It's in large organizations, etc., where they have the wherewithal to have a seat separately for 2 months. But what if we change the model and say, throughout the year, we will send you interns, which would require changes in our system of skilling. And we should look at different kind of these models. In fact, way back about 12, 13 years ago, when I was speaking on an educational conference very much in this city of Hyderabad itself, we had spoken about how medical education and engineering education should be parallel and similar. Once you finish your medical education, you have to do what you call as being a junior doctor and practice before you are actually giving your degree. Similarly, with engineering also, we should do things. And that's the time where I think skills, education have to come together for moving ahead. On that note, probably what I would only like to end by mentioning is that I think these are very interesting times for people to be in, especially if I was given a wish, I would have become a youth. The kind of organizations and everything else is phenomenal. Entrepreneurship definitely is another skill which people look at both ways, as entrepreneurship as well as entrepreneurship. So probably connect with you later on any questions. Thank you, and thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. I think it's a fantastic remarks that you have mentioned in terms of future skills and the changing paradigms and the opportunities that are existing, both at a national level as well as the specific steps undertaken by task in Telangana. And that's very, very interesting to note some of the key initiatives that you have undertaken in terms of especially internships and the customized modules for engineering students or vocational education kind of students. It's very, very interesting. And I'm sure we'll come back to you to learn a little more about that. Right now, the clock strikes 4:36, and I will do my duty. I will invite Professor V. Venkatramana Garu. Professor Venkatramana Garu is someone I respect very highly. He is the Vice Chairman of the Telangana State Council of Higher Education. He is an MBA and a PhD in management. He had got advanced training at IIIEE, Sweden, and IC2 Institute, University of Texas. Prior to his present assignment, he was the most senior professor at School of Management Studies, University of Hyderabad, where he also served as Dean for more than 7 years and has over 30 years of experience spanning across various sectors like academics, industry, board level positions at SBH, which is SBI now, and India Infrastructure Finance Company, IIFCL, Ministry of Finance, Government of India for 3 years. Professor Venkatramana began his career as a research assistant in IPE and later worked as senior executive at Mahindra Nissan Alvin Limited and as a faculty member at Osmania University before joining the University of Hyderabad in 1999. It's a long, eventful, and very, very significant journey, donning various hats across various roles that he has taken up. Professor Venkatramana Garu received many honors and prestigious awards like Vemuri Seshaya Shastri Gold Medal for Best Thesis in Economics, Commerce and Management in 1986, AICTE Career Award for Young Teachers in 1999, and Best Professor in Marketing in Singapore by CMO Council Asia, Singapore in 2012, to name a few. In addition, he is on various committees of UGC, AICTE, University, Court, Board of Studies, so on and so forth. I think it's a long list of accomplishments and milestones that Sir has actually carried forward. I'm very, very happy to have Professor Venkatramana Garu. In spite of his busy schedule, he has come back from a meeting just now and he has joined us. And now I invite him to speak on two very important elements of this particular event, where we are talking about reimagining youth skills post-COVID-19. And therefore, I request Sir to talk about how higher education and skill education can be integrated in Telangana. How can we upskill education in Telangana state, and also some of the perspectives that we can draw from the new structure of the national education policy. Over to you, Sir, Professor Venkatramana Garu.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhakar Garu, a very good friend. And since you have a good friend as the moderator and the president, you will have a lot of good words said about the speaker. So anyway, I think, when we are introduced in such a grand manner, there are grand expectations too. But I must tell you that in this whole journey of my career, and as well as with the government of Telangana now, industry organizations like FICCI have played a major role in my career personally, because my initial career was with industry. And then I realized that I was half-baked in my academics, no good. And I could not, I was not convinced that, I was an MBA already, but I went again to academics, did my PhD and so on and so forth. Having said that, I would like to mention that the new education, the national education policy, so to speak, 2020 is going to be a game changer. Why I call it a game changer is that, in the last 36 years, this policy has come up to nearly 36 years. Not that not much work has been done, but it's a very bold policy. And I'll come to the skill part of it a little later. So when the policy was approved by the cabinet, some of the press people came to me, and two of us spoke at length about this policy. One was a very, very well-respected industry leader, Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy Garu, and I was also asked. So when we said, we had our comments on the NEP, and finally, what was reported in the newspapers was, NEP is a game changer. Industry and academics welcome, students oppose it. So, it was a very big headline in the Pioneer, and, many people said, is it true? But I said that any policy, any change, any regulation, any rule will get its resistance. And of course, states too, including some states like Tamil Nadu in India, have resisted, saying that there are certain discussions which were not held. But I am very proud and happy to note and tell this August group of audience that the government of India, right from the day the draft policy was prepared, was in consultation with the government of Telangana. When I say government of Telangana, the different arms, different wings like technical education, school education, higher education, even the skill part of it was being discussed with us. So this is one good activity which they have done to strengthen the center-state relationship. For example, all of you are aware that the education is in the concurrent list, and usually many times you find that the educational policies and priorities are done on a top-down approach. But this is the time that the states were consulted. And quickly, let me just say that the broad pointers of the NEP, in fact, even today, we had a meeting with the Honorable Minister ongoing till the cabinet started. How do we embrace this policy, A, and if there are any changes to be done, how do we do it? So that discussion is very timely, and I'm sure like normal, any other event, this event is going to be a very important event, even for the government and policymakers like us, because your deliberations from experts who have spoken earlier than me, prior to me, will help us in creating a new model for education and skilling. Having said that, the broad targets were increasing the GER, holistic multidisciplinary education, rationalized institutional structure, motivated, energized, and capable faculty, financial support, technology usage, professional education, and so on and so forth. All of us are aware now it has become very old. In fact, in this parliamentary session, the act will be passed. And shortly, in fact, even the government of India is so ahead that they have already sent the implementation plan. So some of us in the states are still trying to look at the stages where we are. So the first and foremost thing the policy talks about is a holistic education. And this is the point where I'll begin and probably end with the discussion relating to skilling. If you look at the whole policy, whole educational system, and Srikantji also rightly said, and even I heard Sudhakar Rao, as to how our education policies are being created or probably planned and implemented. So you find that postgraduates who are pursuing engineering or postgraduates who are pursuing management lack the basic application skills. For example, you are training graduates who are incapable of doing their own profession unless they go into a finishing school like Amirpet University. I use this example because most of us are not aware that a center in Amirpet, there are a whole line of centers, a whole lane consisting of these training institutes, which give this finishing school kind of training, and they go abroad and take up jobs, etc. Now, what is the lesson we learn from it? We learn the lesson that the student of today is a victim of his own training or his or her own training. The reason again being the curriculum is completely outdated. The teaching methodology is probably 30 years old, 40 years old. Somebody asked, what is your experience? And somebody said 1 year into 30 years. That means the same old notes and the material which your professor taught, the student will teach, and whatever the student is teaching, tomorrow's faculty will teach. So why I'm so critical is that, there is no choice or voice for the student. I have been a visiting faculty at San Diego University and many more universities, including certain countries like Thailand. And I find that they are quickly adapted to the curriculum change. When I say curriculum is not just the subject content, but it is content with relation to relational skills. It's a content with relation to human skills. It's a content with relation to technical skills, and it's a content relating to conceptual skills. Most of you know that skills are of 3 types. First thing is technical skill. For example, if you are an accountant, the basic accounting skills are basic technical skills. The human skills are the skills which you gain or learn or taught to manage a group or team or work. And then the conceptual skills are the bigger skills, like you have to conceptualize issues, problems, solutions, etc. So this is a situation that higher education in India is becoming a kind of an islands of excellence. While I appreciate and admire IIMs and IITs and ICERs, these are all islands of excellence. They have not been able to percolate this thing, probably because of many reasons, because the quality of students is so high and the quality of faculty who are handpicked and who are brought from abroad, etc., including University of Hyderabad, is that they're not, there's a total disconnect between these bigger institutions and the small Mufassil rural universities, so to speak. See, I see in Telangana itself, those which are in Hyderabad and those which are outside of Hyderabad. So when we talk about the higher education scenario, you find that we are churning out degree holders who are not able to probably apply their knowledge. And if you again talk about the education, it is not complete unless you have the three components of knowledge, skill, and attitude. While we may have the knowledge, most of them do not have the skill and attitude. Because you find that nowadays, people like us, when we interview and we sit on boards, the first and foremost thing we find is among younger students is the skill to even speak, the basic communication skills, the skill to express themselves, the skill to disagree. So yesterday I was talking about in a meeting where we are talking about a cluster approach. And today, increasingly, we are talking about this cluster approach. That means, like Shrikantji said, there could be a technical university, there could be a generic courses university like Osmania, and there could be a very high-end institute like IIT. So if IIT and JNTU do not have humanities and languages, they will, humanities and social sciences, they will use Osmania's faculty and vice versa. I just want to give an example as to how, when I say curriculum is outdated. We were in Singapore last year, just before the pandemic, and we were looking at an university in Singapore called ITS. It's an exclusive skilling university. And when we visited there, the president of the university suggested, in fact, this is the brainchild of our Honorable Minister for IT, K.T. Ramanao, that, the question he asked once to all the vice chancellors was that, why is that our students are not able to have this hands-on experience or expertise? So we said that probably we need to infuse certain skill-based courses. So we started working on that. Which are the courses? What kind of intervention we can do? So one of the things we did was to visit this country, this wonderful country like Singapore, and we met the Singapore's education minister, and we were really surprised when they said that the policy of Singapore is to revise this curriculum every 3 years. And every 3 years, this policy is revised not just by academicians. This is revised in consultation with industry, doctors, lawyers, retailers, pressure groups, people who disagree with the system also. So that brings this element of a broad, wide spectrum kind of a coverage of the higher education of the system. Now I'll come specific to the higher education, and also I'll link it to the school education and other educational progression as we speak. The basic purpose of the NEP or the basic approach has been, they have completely shifted from the traditional model to a 5+3+3+4. I want everybody to remember this, because to me it took 5-6 times. And when the Honorable Chief Minister was talking about this, I wrote down and spoke because I didn't want to goof up before a person like a Chief Minister. And I said 5+3+3+4. What does it mean? I will not talk about the 5+3+3. I'll talk about the 4. The 4 is the last 2 years of our education before the board exams, that is 10th class or whatever you call it. And the next 2 are the intermediate education. Now, if you see, one of the few states which has the intermediate education is Telangana, and probably, I don't know, 1 or 2 states. Andhra is also there. And the fascination for the people from Telangana and Andhra is to make everybody an engineer or a doctor. And they are looked down upon skilled workers, skilled people who earn actually more than most of the white collar professionals as somebody who is inferior to knowledge or something. But what we did was, we want to now look at the 5+3+3+4. That means the 4 years, intermediate, 2 years. Why should anybody go to an intermediate education? It's a pressure cooker learning. Instead, we infuse, and like in Singapore, when we went to this university, they said from 8th class onwards, what they do is they try to look at the interest of the student. They identify specific interest of the student. And if they're good, they take them to the higher education. If they find they're good in skilling, they will take them to the vocational education. So what I mean to say is that not everybody needs to go to higher education. This is a mental block we have in India, not only India, in many other countries, that if you are highly educated, only then you get a job. Unfortunately, not. What we need to do is integrate the skill framework into the educational system. And I'll tell you how we can do it. In the graduate program, in fact, yesterday I was talking to the Commissioner of Technical Education, Government of Telangana, Naveen Mittalji, and we found that there is a component called skill enhancement courses in all our degree programs, BSc, BCom, BA, etc., etc. And what people are doing now, what students do now, is probably read the skilling part and write the skilling part, which is completely a kind of a misnomer. Because if you want to read skilling, I think you'll be nowhere. And recently we have been seeing in our WhatsApp University about people who have been online classes. I don't want to comment on that. But what I mean to say is that if I can ask my students to prepare a project, for example, what is wrong? In my childhood, I went through the art and craft lessons. And even today, whatever age we are, whether we are 40, 50, 60, 70, we love to play with the clay, or we love to mold the toys, or we love to draw something. Now, why can't we introduce certain skill-based courses in consultation with industry again? For example, we are talking of this year as year of AI, year of ML. Why can't we just have a small project? What exactly is AI? Or in fact, moving further, giving them some skills. For example, there's nothing wrong in fact, I remember when I joined industry, Mahindra and Mahindra, many, many years back, in the beginning of my career, I remember the production manager saying that unless you dirty your hands, you are not going to get that skill in the automotive workshop. And we dirtied our hands in the sense we had to assemble and disassemble engines. Being an MBA, I never thought, and first 2 weeks I was a little upset that I am asked to open engines and then go at 9 o'clock punch and have a common lunch at the canteen at the factory. But I think this is missing. The connect is that the higher education is completely dealing with the skilling part. Next thing. The next thing we want to do is send these students into groups and then let them understand concept or a system or an operational part of some product or some service. For example, how many of us know about Amazon? We all order Amazon. We all order Flipkart. If you ask a BSc, BCom student to track and trace how this logistics works, how the smart logistic work they are doing, they would not be able to do it. So when we talk about technology, it should be related to certain concept. So in academics, in education, we say, in schooling, we used to be told, tell, show, illustrate. This is completely missing. So my submission to all our industry friends and also school people, school teachers, principals who are also on this, is about having linkage with this industry, linkage with the skill-based programs. And in fact, I again remember, I don't know, so Mr. Sudhakar is a very strict timekeeper, so I think I'll take one more minute. In fact, you can warn me if I'm exceeding. I remember a former consulate general of the United States in Hyderabad, I can't remember, Keys, his name was Keys, and he once said in a meeting I was addressing that, Venkat, I'm a very proud bricklayer and I have become a diplomat and I'm now the consulate general. How many of our higher education students can claim that they know a certain skill, including at least, skill for living? And again, 3 skills I said: skills for living, skills for learning, and skills for lifelong earning. These are 3 kind of this thing. If you don't know how to operate a small this thing, you will not be able to completely, in this digital infrastructure in transformation phase. I was the first one to start some Zoom meetings in my friends circle, in the academic circle. And I was a little scared because, whether it will fail or not. But, having gotten around 3,000 meetings so far, 2,000 to 3,000 meetings, I think, it's a fear that one has. So every faculty, every student will be made to undergo a skill-based application programs. And I invite some of you to give us some suggestions. And finally, everybody need not have a degree. What we are trying to say is that if you study 1 year, we'll give you a certificate, diploma, diploma or certificate. And if you want, you can go for a degree. And lastly, I must tell you, this is a very, very unique idea we had, thanks to our minister, Shiketia, who's always full of ideas. And the idea is that if a student wants to become an entrepreneur, this is another dimension. Everybody wants to have a fixed tenure job. Unfortunately, 60% of the jobs will not be prevalent in the coming years. You don't know what is the future of our jobs. I don't know if my job is going to be there 10 years later, or somebody like Alexa would answer all the questions and answers. And I'm irrelevant. I become irrelevant because they are more knowledgeable. Machines can decode machines. Software will write software. So what we thought is if entrepreneurship can be at least sensitized to the students. So what we think now, we're going to do it already. We think policy is there that we are going to introduce a gap year. And this is again a very radical step in the government that we would like students to, if they have some ideas, let them take a gap year, let them try, let them fail if they possible. And this again, the word failure is taken very negatively in India. You have to celebrate failure. You have to encourage people to try it out. Otherwise, it's status quo. So I think having said that, we would like to de-link the education and as Srikant said, marry skill and education. And everywhere in the world, education and skill are working together like two brothers, twin brothers or twin sisters. Unfortunately, in our country, we have delineated them and treating them as separate entities. I think if you have to produce employable graduates who are sensible, capable, and worthy of their degrees, you have to have a proper internship, a proper immersion, and a proper internationalization of the skill framework. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that has reset the context in a more comprehensive manner than I began with. It's very, very useful, and thank you very much for delivering the talk. There are many commonalities. There is a pattern in what we are talking. But for now, what I will do is I'll quickly take one or two questions, and the question can be common to three of you because Dr. Srivastava has left here to go to the airport to catch a flight at 7 p.m. Therefore, he left. So three of you can take this question. So the first question was, although asked in the context of what Dr. Vikas Singh ji has mentioned in terms of the demographic dividend and the calculation mistake that we do with respect to the demographic dividend. The question asked by one of the members in the audience is, how do you take advantage of this demographics that we have, and how can we create more employment? It's a very generic question. I think I'll start with Dr. Vikas Singh ji.
Thank you for asking me that question. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think we have to understand and realize that we are not going to produce as many jobs as India needs. Now we have two choices. Either we need to get into an area and be the Chinese of the world, where we can become the factory of the world, which in my view is not possible. The only way we can solve the job problem is to focus on 4 or 5 different sectors where we have strength. For example, textile is a great strength. Textile is a great strength of India, which can produce jobs. The second sector is tourism industry, which can be, so we have to make sure that the government realizes that instead of trying to be everything to everybody, we need to focus on our strength. There are low-hanging fruits. Our ability to pluck those low-hanging fruit will define where we reach. Having said that, we have to realize that we will not be producing as many jobs, which means that the youth must understand that entrepreneurship can be a way to make a difference. But those of us who think that we can do a generic management program or a generic engineering program, and we will be able to be employed in organizations like TCS and the other IT sectors or the BPO, they're going to be disappointed, because technology is going to make sure that the IT companies and the BPO companies are not going, in fact, they're going to reduce the number of jobs. As jobs become, as jobs can be done by machines, they will find it difficult to provide more jobs. So the challenges are there. I think it has to be holistically done by the government. The expectation of the youth should also be to focus on where they can make a difference. I I think it's a complex issue. I don't think that we can solve the problem here, but there are challenges. Galore, skill, uh, wha- the skill of yesterday is not going to help the youth of today.
Right, right. That does answer the question raised by one of our friends from the audience. Now, I'm going to put this a point. New Zealand has been recognized as having one of the best systems of education for the framework of the curriculum, which involves future skills, collaboration between education providers and the industry. We have talked about all these things, cultural diversity and tolerance, among other measures. Now, as a result of all these things, by focusing on creative and analytical skills, which we have listed down, uh, Mr. Srikanth Sinha has spoken about it. I touched upon it in my opening remarks. Creative and analytical skills, entrepreneurial skills, all of us have talked about it, leadership skills, digital and technical skills, global awareness in order to respond to the changes caused by the new digital technologies. As a result of all these efforts, New Zealand is ranked first in the Educating for the Future Index. I would now request, based on this proposition, first from Professor Venkatramana Garu, as to what are the plans or where we are with respect to that in the government circles and in the Telangana State Council of Higher Education. Are we discussing these issues and propositions? And therefore, the adjacency of this question is to invite Mr. Srikanth Sinha also to comment, because it falls as a common area for all of us. Professor Venkatramana Garu.
I think at the council, we realized quite many years back, but when it took some time for kind of getting into a kind of a structure for this. So we formed 3 committees, and usually many people say committees and meetings where hours are wasted, minutes are noted. But this is not the case in these committees. We have formed 3 committees, one on reforms in higher education. So in the broad spectrum of reforms, we said first is the curriculum. Second is the internship and extension activity. The third is setting up incubators. I'll start from the incubators. Many people again comment incubators are like incinerators where we put a lot of money. But Telangana is going to have in all the universities on a phased manner incubators so that students will have plug and play environment in their colleges or something. Somewhere there we can tinkering labs kind of a thing, and like Atal Innovation Labs. The second thing in the reforms agenda is the internship, which Srikanth talked about, the TVAT model or the apprentice model, which we are working. I cannot say that we have, but what we have really come a little ahead of it is that we want to develop 4 verticals in the State Council, and it will be shortly be finalized. The first vertical would be on quality and accreditation for whatever we do for education, learning, teaching, and skill. The second would be a skill enhancement cell, which would mean it would constantly scout and reach out to people, including task and work with task and other bodies to come out with models of skill development. So while task is a basically implementing thinking mind of the government in the skilling sector, the additional support will come from the State Council, which will synergize their efforts. Both will synergize, and tomorrow is the World Skills Day, and maybe it's a good day to start with today itself, that we would like to synergize our efforts because we have the reach, they have the technique. And once you have the both, like the Virgin Galactic, we are also going to get into the skill world, and then I just remembered that it's nothing, it's all positive thinking. And the next would be, of course, internationalization. We would like to get some of the best skilling courses, introduce them in the course curriculum, and then we will again tie up with organizations like industry bodies like FICCI and and other bodies like T-Hub, so that, it's like a complete chain, chain of activity, from teaching, learning, from extension, from training, from certification, to becoming a global accepted student. So this is where I'll stop, because
Right, sir. Thank you. Now I'll request Mr. Srikant Sinha to come in, especially given the fact that the focus areas that we have identified are the most necessary focus areas for anybody to move towards a skilled India, or a most successfully utilized the country that has utilized the resources of its demographic advantage. So we all have identified that they are extremely important. Therefore, your perspective on this, sir, Mr. Srikant Sinha.
Sure. Thanks for this question. And of course, what Professor Venkataramana Garu already spoke about, yes, TASC and Telangana State Council for Higher Education are working very, very closely to ensure that we are able to reach out to all these students across the state itself. Last year, together, we announced on 50,000 people being skilled on Coursera programs, etc., which was a unique step that we took at that time. And of course, we did X billion together, and multiple programs we keep on launching together so that the whole state benefits. If you look at TASC, we are already running programs catering to some of these things that we spoke about, be it in terms of the 21st century skills, transferable skills. Of course, we don't call them soft skills any longer, because these are very, very essential skills. So we call them as essential skills. And TASC is already providing these programs, of course, online right now, to all these students who are registered with TASC, are associated with any of the Telangana colleges and universities, etc. So that's the very first thing that we are doing. Second thing is, last year and this also comes to answer some of the questions that you asked, Dr. Vikas, also, in terms of most of the people start with entrepreneurship development programs. So you don't even try to tell the person what entrepreneurship is, but because you have a thing over there that you need to create entrepreneurs, you just push a person and start him to get working on that. So last year, thanks to the guidance of the Honorable Principal Secretary and fulfilling the vision of our Honorable Minister, Sri K.T. Ramarao Garu, we started a program called as I4TS, which is Innovating for Telangana. Now, this is a very unique program which was conducted online, where we reached out to about 7,000 rural youth and told them what is entrepreneurship, what is an entrepreneur, why you should do an entrepreneurship program, why should you become an entrepreneur. So it was an innovation and mindset development program, right? In India today, if you look at it, a whole lot of innovation exists in the various corners, right? And one of my heroines is this young girl from Telangana who has done nothing great, but she has tied 2 sticks on one end with some string and created a wedge between those two sticks. And she keeps it over a bucket, and there are 3 utensils kept underneath it at different spacing. And all she does is picks up a lemon that her parents have got from the farm, and she rolls it on that, and that has become a lemon sorter for her. So wherever the size of the lemon reaches, automatically drops into that various buckets or that various vessels. Now, this is the kind of innovation that is existing. Now, this cannot become an industry, but definitely it enhances your productivity. After the sorting thing, they are able to sell and get a better price over there. So helping the students understand how innovation can be the game changer, how entrepreneurship can be a game changer. We ran this program, and then for about 300 people, who had some ideas in the mind. Of course, we were targeting social and rural innovation only. And the program was aptly called, Social Innovation for Simplifying Lives, right? So, Sarlamaina, sorry, I'm forgetting the name right now, but yes, that was the program. So the program got received very well. So, and it included things like innovation, design thinking, How do you understand the whole concepts, communications, of course. So it was a complete program, and about 300 people then benefited out of it. So looking at it both sides, one is, even if you don't become an entrepreneur today, 6 years down the line, probably you might look at it, right? So that is important. And of course, as Venkataramana Garu said, that, most of these universities, JNTU already has got the J-Hub. A lot of other universities using the TechQuip funds, the colleges using TechQuip funds, etc., have set up incubators and innovation labs, etc. So our main aim is, how do you expose these students to more and more hands-on kind of things, creativity, helping them use their skills better. I think one of the things we also need to realize is that today our examination system, right, is asking a fish and a giraffe and a monkey to climb the tree. And that is something which needs to be looked at. So one of the examples that I'd like to give just a minute more, and I'll cite an example. When one of the largest aircraft engine manufacturers came to India, they went to some of the colleges, which are the aeronautical colleges. Aeronautical engineering colleges had the World War II engines on which they were training. So they came to us with this skill requirement that they needed people. We worked together with them. We looked at the skills required. So hand dexterity was one of the skills required. 3D and spatial visualization and thinking was the second skill required. So we examined and selected people based on that from the diploma, from districts, polytechnic colleges, electrical and mechanical students were picked up. They were given this training. And while they would have ended up becoming mechanics and electricians over there in their districts, today they are part of this organization, which is into creating aircraft engines. So it is possible to skill people understanding what the thing is. For example, if I cannot stand the sight of blood, right? Should I join the army or become a doctor? So apart from skills, we need to also look at attitudes and aptitudes also, and then look at people.
Fantastic. I think you have given us a lot of optimism in terms of the things that TASK has conducted in terms of the initiatives, as well as the anecdotal example that you have given, where the aspiration can be as big as working for an aircraft manufacturer. I mean, that's an amazing example. I'm sure it goes a long way to inspire the students and members who are today present around the screen and to learn from. My second question, or the most importantly, third question is, I'm going to create a small debate between Professor Venkataramana Garu and Mr. Srikant Sinha. Myself and Dr. Vikas Singh will silently watch it. So the debate is like this. If I have attentively listened to what you have said, both of you, Mr. Srikant Sinha has said that having a separate skill university, more of them is not the requirement, it's not the right thing, but we should have skill-based courses within what you already study. I think that is on one hand what you said. On the other hand, Professor Venkataramana Garu has said that, the education system is progressing towards giving the attention that skilling requires, and therefore many skill universities have come up. So the facts are that over the last 10 years, starting from 2011, large number of skill universities, they're called skilling universities, they've come up in numbers, from say Teamly Skills University to Bharatiya Skills Development University to Rajasthan ILD Skills University, Sri Vishwakarma Skills University, TIS School of Vocational Education, Symbiosis Skills and Open University, World Skills Center, so on and so forth, and many more. So the debate is more skill-based courses what you currently study vis-a-vis establishing separate skilling universities. Over to both of you, sir.
Probably Professor Venkataramana Garu, you should speak first. But one thing which he also mentioned in his thing was that skills in, because there are electives there in the courses right now also. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to make this whole discussion very interesting. That's the reason I call it a debate. But I think we can refine what we said so that the audience will stand to gain from this discussion and have meaningful takeaways. So if there's a connectivity problem with Professor Venkatraman Garu, you can start, sir, and we will hear from him once he joins.
Sure. So as I said, and as Professor Venkatraman also mentioned that, today what Telangana is looking at is the skill component which already exists in the programs, how that can be utilized much better. Today, when we talk about project-based learning, which is a new model that has emerged recently of late, and if you look at all IIMs, right, IIMs also have got a case study-based approach, which is nothing but skills. When you go and start working somewhere, again, it is skills, right? So having said that, what is important is what do our education institutions prepare us for? Our education institutions are supposed to prepare us for jobs. Today, the reality is that our education institutions in the current structure are not able to give jobs to people. Therefore, along with education, so I would probably like to put it as a new definition of the whole concept, the work model itself. So we should have knowledge, of course, which we will get from education. You should have the skill, you should have the capability and the passion. So these four things are key for anyone to get a good job, right? Now, of course, passion is what comes from, it's an intrinsic thing. A person has passion towards a job, and that's where he excels, right? Today, the space flight that has taken off with Virgin Atlantic would not have happened if Richard Branson didn't have that passion. So that is important. But without knowledge that you get in the education system, again, just having a skill without the knowledge is not going to help. So the thing is, the concept should be that, yes, more and more skills should be dovetailed into the whole thing. Our thing today is more of theoretical thing, right? In our school education system also, you are supposed to mug up the Pythagoras theorem. No one tells you why is it to be used. How can you use a star, to find the distance of or the height of a building? Now, all these things can be actually taught. That how do you apply things? So application of knowledge is what skills is, right? Practice of that becomes actually skills. Application of knowledge and practice of it is what skills is. The whole thing is that today, people, when you create new skills universities, of course, if you're talking about an institution like what is in Odisha, which is a specific institution which is for upskilling and reskilling, etc., right? Definitely they'll be required. But for entry-level jobs, I probably feel that it's important to have skills dovetailed into the education curriculum. It should be implemented in fact, I will go a step further. The biggest challenge for Telangana is people can understand English, but they can't communicate in English. That is, the verbal and written skills are not too good. Now, we tried running programs for a lot of students in different colleges, but finding out time apart from the curriculum becomes a challenge. Now, if this is part of the curriculum itself, if it's a credit course like what we have now, business communication English as part of the technical education system, the polytechnics, etc. over here, automatically the person would pay attention to it and be able to get a good job. So that's where I rest my point that why skills, and I think the thing which I want to also mention is that if you look at the future of world also, right? The future of work and the world also. The definition of ASAP is changing. So first is adapt, second is seek, third is be agile, and fourth is practice, right? So ASAP has become adapt, because today you have seen how people have to adapt to changes very, very quickly. All the skills that we spoke about, adaptability is there. You need to seek what you want to do, right? Earlier, people used to become an engineer and then do an MBA and then keep on selling insurance or something else, right? Seek what your areas of interest are, because that's where jobs exist. You have to be agile. You can't say, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. You have to be very, very agile to adapt to these changes. And of course, you have to practice enough to be functional, which, if you look at all these fours, are basically a combination of knowledge and skills.
Great, sir. I think that's a great way to end this conversation. Before I wrap the whole session up and also wait for Professor Venkatraman Garu to come in, I would like to request Dr. Vikas Singh ji to take half a minute and explain to us, because he's a very involved commentator on skilling. And I would request him to talk about it. While I was mentioning various names of the skilling universities, I missed out his organization, and therefore my apologies. And I request you to speak for half a minute, sir, and then I will wrap it up with your permission after that.
So just sticking to the debate that whether we need skill universities or not, I heard Sinha talk about and great and valid points. My only concern about this whole thing is that while we need education, the unfortunate part is that our education system believes and is geared and is made in a sense that let's keep skills out. Education is primary. We are come from this Brahminical society where education is for the learned. Those people who feel they are educated, they don't want to do the work which is in the area of skill. He was talking about the IIMs. IIMs is not a skill university. It's not a system which produces skill. It provides the learning for us to make sure that we are able to we are able to create something. What we really need in this country is either skills should be fused with education, which unfortunately it has not. I've been fighting about this across different forums, including the Planning Commission. Why is it so difficult for us to fuse education skill into the education curriculum? Shrikant was talking about, Mr. Sinha was talking about, why don't we give a credit for the paper? Why do we need to make this a credit course? Why don't we have a system where if a person is not able to deliver the learning or the education is not useful? For example, I always used to be fascinated by the concept when my son was in class 6. He knew exactly how many kilometers his school was. He used to say, Papa, my school is 7 kilometers from the house. But that doesn't give him anything. What he needs to know is how much time will it take for him to go from his school to his house to the school. Unfortunately, our education system is geared to provide knowledge, but not doing. Unless we are able to fuse these knowledge and doing, I think we will probably be forced, or we will probably be condemned to set up skill centers, which, unless delivered well, I mean, our experience has been that close to about 50 to 60% of skills, which is provided in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, or is not really wholesome, and it doesn't do justice to either the time or the money that has been spent on these skilling programs. We have to. India is an aspiring country. We need to have a holistic solution. The only holistic solution is to make sure that our education system skill is integrated into the education system. Yes, there will be people who do not want to get skill. They want to write a PhD program. They want to write literature. Maybe they can get educated at uh, these great institutions. But if you want a job, you need to get the right kind of skill, and that has to be done at the level of the government. The government needs to solve this problem. I always say the government has been solving the wrong problems. Our problems are not that we don't have educational system. Most of us will be surprised to know that we have the maximum number of schools in this country. That we have 3 times the number of schools that China has. So we are good at making infrastructure. We are good at um, creating those things. But what really is needed is something that we are not looking at. I'm sorry to be very hostile. Sorry to
No,
be
it's
very
very good.
blunt.
It's very good. Dr. Vikas Singh ji, you made a very good point, and your closing remarks have been made extremely well. Unless and until we take such stands and identify the problem areas, see, governments are required. Governments have various responsibilities. There are special councils and centers of excellence that are required to focus on various items like entrepreneurship, skill development, empowerment, inclusiveness, diversity, so on and so forth. Therefore, specialized centers are required. And the fact that the government itself cannot do everything is something which we also have to accept and admit. And even the government will have to admit that. So therefore, then only we will come up with some creative solutions. But ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very interesting session over the last 1.5 hours or close to 2 hours now, across 4 distinguished gentlemen speaking about their perspective on how to make skilling a priority and how to take the country from the current level to the next level. Some of the highlights have been the jobs that you have currently will not actually be in existence in the next 5 years. Therefore, the revolution that has been triggered by digital technologies like artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, will have to have new skills coming in order to increase the employment and be ready to take the jobs that are emerging. Number 2, in the healthcare sector, there are several opportunities that are emerging, and technology has played an important role as much as the consumer preferences have changed over a period of time, and therefore the new opportunities have given rise to new roles, and therefore the entire segment of allied healthcare professionals, whereas there is a huge requirement of say 8 million, the current provision is for only about 1 million or 2. I think that itself will help us understand what is the magnitude of efforts for skilling and the magnitude of opportunity that is existing for us, and we need to marry these two. As far as education is concerned, yes, we need to take a cue from what Germany is doing with their apprenticeship program to what New Zealand is doing, making their citizens future ready. The young citizens are made future ready with definitive courses which are made part of the curriculum. So we need to keep that as an aspiration and move forward. And from having large number of courses within your current programs vis-a-vis having specialized skilling universities, we also need to understand that a concerted effort is required across various bodies. Academics often have been accused of working in silos, and it is true. And therefore, that has to be completely undone, and we need to come together and work with various agencies and take the benefit of collaboration and penetrate into the areas that require immediate attention and not just remain academic and therefore theoretical. I think we need to be more practical and we need to be more approachable. Therefore, that will translate into creating a mindset of students where theory is not extremely important as much as practice is important or practical learning is important. And that is going to set the tone for us in the days to come and in the years to come when we are talking about skilling and employability. Very interesting point that has come up from Mr. Srikanth Sinha is that ASAP, that adapt, seek, agility and practice. I think that's a very interesting takeaway for us. And also I must appreciate what TASK has been doing with respect to I4TS, where they have targeted about 7,000 rural youth and reoriented them towards innovation and entrepreneurship, which is one of the ways of addressing the problem of employability. Overall, it has been a fantastic session covering education, healthcare, entrepreneurship, innovation, digital technologies, and government role. All in all, it has been a wonderful session and very, very useful takeaways for all of us. I want to thank each and every member, all the distinguished speakers, and also the members of audience for patiently listening to all of us. Thank you very much, the FICCI Telangana State Council, and also the Telangana State Council of Higher Education, and special thanks to TASK, the Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge, for partnering and making this event a very useful, a learning one, and successful event. Thank you very much. Thank you, Akhilesh. Thanks the entire team which has worked relentlessly behind the scenes to make this happen today. Thank you all, and I wish you all the best on the World Skills Day, which is happening tomorrow.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And greetings.